Hello everyone, welcome to Shanta Lakshmi IAS. In this video, let us discuss about the legislation that is Indian Antarctic Bill 2022 which was in news recently. So why this bill was in news? Because recently the Parliament has passed Indian Antarctic Bill 2022. The Parliament means both the houses, both the Lok Sabha plus and Rajya Sabha, both the houses has passed this Indian Antarctic Bill 2022. So what is the need for this bill? The need is to fulfill the provisions under this Antarctic Treaty. While we delve into the discussion, we'll deal with this. What is this treaty? Who are the members of this? What are the conditions, etc. And what is the second need? To preserve the pristine nature of this continent. And what are the features of this bill? The bill seeks to prohibit Indian expedition to Antarctica without permit or written authorization of another party which is a party to the Antarctic Treaty. So what's the first feature of this bill? It prohibits the Indian expedition to Antarctica without any permit. Not only the Indian permit, also the written authorization of another country which is a party to this Antarctic Treaty. And what's the second feature of this bill? It aims to provide for the constitution of this Antarctic Fund. So what's the purpose of this fund? For the welfare of Antarctic research work and protection of this Antarctic environment. So what's the second provision or second feature is that to establish an Antarctic Fund for the welfare of research and protection of the Antarctic environment. And what's the third feature of this bill? It is to extend jurisdiction of Indian courts to Antarctica and lays out penal provision for crimes on the continent by Indian citizens. Not only the Indian citizens, also the foreign citizens who are part of Indian expeditions. The foreigners who are working in our Indian research stations in Antarctica, they are also eligible under this Indian codes if they do any crime. So what is the third provision? Third provision is to extend jurisdiction of this Indian courts to Antarctica and lays out penal provisions for crimes on this continent by not only by Indian citizens but also the foreign citizens who are working as part of this Indian expeditions in Antarctica. Then what's the fourth provision? The fourth provision is to establish Committee on Antarctic Governance and Environmental Protection. So what's the purpose or aim of this committee? It is to monitor, implement and ensure compliance with international laws and emission standards. So the fourth provision is to establish a Committee on Antarctic Government and Governance and Environmental Protection for the purpose of monitoring, implementation and for ensuring compliance with international laws and emission standards. And what's the fifth feature of this bill? It prohibits mining, dredging and activities which threaten the pristine conditions of this Antarctica continent. So, what are the features of this bill? First is to prohibit Indian expedition without any without permit, and the second one is to provide for the to constitute Antarctic Fund, and the third one is to extend jurisdiction to Indian courts, jurisdiction of Indian courts for crimes done by Indian citizens and foreign citizens who are part of Indian expeditions. And what's the fourth provision? Fourth provision is to establish a Committee on Antarctic Governance and Environmental Protection. And the fifth provision is to prohibit mining, dredging and activities which threaten the pristine conditions of this Antarctica. So these are all the 5 features of this Indian Antarctic Bill. And moving forward, now India's endeavor in Antarctica. India signed this Antarctic Treaty in 1983 and it soon received the consultative status. So India is a consultative country in this Antarctic Treaty and India signed this treaty in 1983. It also signed the Madrid Protocol which came into force in 1998. So what are the India's research stations present in Antarctica? These are Maitri at Skarmachar Hills and Bharati at Larsaman Hills. These through Maitri and Bharati are in Antarctica. These are India's research stations in Antarctica. And Dakshin Gangotri was the first Indian base established in 1984. Currently, these two stations are working and this was decommissioned. But Dakshin Gangotri was the first Indian base established in Antarctica in the year 1984. So what is the India's endeavor in Antarctica? It signed the Antarctic Treaty, also the Madrid Protocol, and two research stations of India in Antarctica are Maitri and Bharati. And Dakshin Gangotri was the first Indian base established in Antarctica, that too in the year 1984 after signing the Antarctic Treaty. Coming to this Antarctic Treaty. So what are the provisions of this treaty? It ensures no military use in this Antarctica continent and also gives the freedom of scientific investigation. And the third one is that it supports the free exchange of scientific plans and data and any territorial claims which have that to be put on hold. And it aims to ensure the nuclear free zone in this Antarctica. And it applies to land only but not seas. This Antarctic Treaty applies to land only but not the seas. And the seventh one is that all research stations are open for inspection by other nations. And national laws apply to citizens but not the areas. And ninth one is that the treaty may be modified at any time, which requires the unanimous agreement of treaty nations. If the treaty is to be modified, it requires the unanimous agreement of these treaty nations. And all treaty nations to ensure no one carries out acts against the treaty. It ensures the accountability and responsibility. So what are the features of this Antarctic Treaty? There is no military use in this Antarctica continent and it ensures the freedom of scientific investigation, also encourages the free exchange of scientific plans and data, and any territorial claims are there, those were put on hold. It aims to ensure the nuclear free zone. That means no nuclear weapons or nuclear technology can be used in this Antarctica continent, and it applies to land only but not the seas. And all stations are open to inspection by other nations which were part of this Antarctic Treaty. And national laws apply to citizens only but not to the areas. And the treaty may be modified at any time which requires the unanimous agreement. And the treaty nations to that no one carries out against the treaty. So these are all the features of this Antarctic Treaty. Now, coming to this Antarctica continent. It is the Earth's southernmost continent and it contains the geographic southern pole and it is situated in the Antarctic region of the southern hemisphere. And it is the fifth largest continent. And in this, there is no inhabited population, that is, except for the manning nearly 40 permanent stations established by several countries, it does not have any population, that is human population living or making a livelihood. There are 40 permanent stations, that is research stations were built in Antarctica for scientific research. Those research personnel are only in there, but there is no inhabitation, no population. So it is at southernmost continent, region of the, it is situated in the southern hemisphere, fifth largest continent, and the continent is uninhabited except for those manning the 40 permanent stations. So this is the Antarctica. Here it is Ross Sea, and here it is Weddell Sea. With this, we'll end the session here. If you like, please like and share. Thank you.